I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad and so excited to talk to you today. My name is Desiree Young, and this has been an interesting experience. We have folks that are chiming in from everywhere, and I know that they're going to be very interested in what you have to say, especially because you have made the penultimate transition, right? You have not only authored over 200 books, but you're a TV producer, you're a casting director, you're a contributing journalist and blogger. You've done it all. That's an understatement. And I know
Oh,
you're
thank you.
not modest. I can feel it. I can feel it. So I'm going to go ahead and dote on you. Okay. Is that all right?
That's fun. That's great. Thank you.
Now, with all of that, Jeff, it is interesting. I know that you came from incredibly humble beginnings. Are you open to sharing a little bit about that? Because I think this is a story that everyone is going to be able to glean from.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely come from humble beginnings. I mean, I was born into what I like to call American poverty, where it's not quite, Central American poverty, but our version of it, where we hardly had any food, of course, welfare and food stamps. The primary years were my mom was a single parent until she remarried. And I had a, really challenging childhood. I look back and there's a lot of things that I really think that my parents did well, and there are things that were really difficult for all of three of us kids. But what that did was really instilled the creativity in us from the very early age. My mom really encouraged us to be creative. My sister was the songwriter. I was the writer. My little brother was my little brother, always really into music. And it's funny because we all are doing something like that right now in our adulthood.
Oh, that's incredible. And here's what's interesting. I read a specific quote that you said, and you mentioned your stories take place in towns you've lived while searching for your purpose. Elaborate a bit on that, because you write a great deal about love. You write your characters are such interesting characters. What does that mean? Search for purpose and connecting to the books that you authored.
Well, I always like to write about my own personal experience in a sense that a lot of the characters are really sort of going through what I would call like an my autobiographical experience. So I started out, I was born in Salt Lake, Utah, of all places in the world for a person of color.
Interesting.
We yeah, then we
That's
moved
another
to
interview for another time.
that exactly. I was my dad. I'm like Utah. But from there, then we moved to Oregon, Hillsboro, Oregon, which is right outside of Portland. And then at the age of 17, we moved to Las Vegas. And that's where I spent most of my young adulthood from 17 to about 26. After that, I went to Orlando, and from there, briefly, the Boston area and Hull, Massachusetts, which is where I wrote my first novel. And then from there, I went to Miami. And after Miami, I went to New York. And after New York, I went to Costa Rica. And then now I'm back in the New York, New Jersey area. So all of those sort of little adventures along the way, I picked up characters in my mind, people that I interacted with, experiences I had, the ups and downs in life. And they all became sort of the basis for the stories that I would end up telling, both the love experiences, heartbreak, challenges, the great glory days of finding my success, and everything in between. So it's been a great experience for a writer, really, because it gives me like texture and color and something to write about. So sometimes it wasn't so great when I was experiencing it, but now I look back and I'm really grateful for those experiences.
That's incredible. And the idea of being able, like you mentioned, to take every experience and become an economist, if you will, right? And not waste a single part of that. Isn't that what great writing is about?
I think so. For me, writing is about talking about your own experiencing experiences and sharing it with other people in a way that they can relate to. And no matter what background we're from, we all have these universal experiences that we can all relate to. And in all aspects of life, whether it be about family or love or work or anything that really connects us is sort of the fabric of a writer. And for me, I look back and I'm grateful because I purposely choose people in my life who I've had experiences with, to be characters in my books in some capacity. It might be half of this character and half that person, the other half the other person, and I kind of merge them together. But I consciously choose my direct experiences to for my creativity.
I love that. I'm curious, how has that or has it impacted those relationships? I mean, have you had friends or family basically saying, I saw you writing about me, what's going on? Or did you tell them at all? I'm curious because that's a natural extension, right? You know, it's kind of those are your experiences, these are the people you know, and you can kind of change some things, but how has that impacted you?
Well, I think the only experience I've had where I've told people directly was my first novel. A couple of characters, I would tell them, like there's a character in my first novel, which is called Forever My Lady, where there is a drill instructor, and the friend of mine was a drill sergeant, and a prison boot camp, and I loosely based the character on him as well as my dad. The other characters in that story are very much related to people that I know, and so I would tell them sometimes, "Hey, it's loosely based on you," and they're actually flattered by it.
Wonderful.
Um, I don't think I've heard anybody who's a bad guy in my stories. Oh, I based it on you, but you know that I won't do.
That's good. No, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. What's interesting, Jeff, is that you've done what I don't question so many authors and aspiring authors that are chiming in are interested in doing, and that is getting their work beyond the book, right? Certainly, and I want to mention, I read an interesting quote you said. You mentioned with the push for diversity, like many creators of color, I got excited. I could just imagine Hollywood knocking on my door and asking me, okay, unknown filmmaker, here's a few gazillion dollars, what you got? And you mentioned, but that's not exactly what's happened for us. But at the end of the day, Hollywood cares about one color and one color only, green. If they think they can make money with you, then you'll catch their interest. Talk to us about that transition for you of becoming not just an author, but also getting what you've written in your characters into the film world. Share with us how that happened.
Sure. I mean, I just like I said in the quote. I mean, I got really excited when we started seeing things like the Oscar So White movement, which I think was one of the initial pushes for diversity on the screen and off the screen. I thought, like, wow, now finally, people are starting to wake up. And of course, we know that didn't happen right away. Now I'm seeing a difference. Now that I'm getting a lot more opportunities that are in Hollywood, I see that they are consciously choosing to connect with people who are people of color, both in front and behind the screen. I've definitely seen executives come out to me, find me, and message me and say, "Hey, you know, what you got?" It's starting to happen. It definitely is.
That's
I think it just took some
great.
time. I mean, I've had two experiences. I've had, I don't want to say the major names, but two major studio executives, from two different houses have actually messaged me on social media and hunted me out and asked me, what do you have to offer? Have you ever thought about writing and producing? So it is starting to happen.
That's a great perspective because I think it's very easy for those that are new to this industry to automatically assume there's not change going on. Talk to us about what you believe it takes from your own experience about being in the right position to get those DMs, to get those emails. What does it take? Is it just a matter of time, or what else do you think has been kind of part of your formula?
I think looking back, I think what has changed for me as a creator now who's having opportunities is continuing to put products out on social media of a certain quality. Um, Very personal stories. So you have to know the difference between good and bad. Yeah, it's subjective to some to a degree, but you have to know what looks good and what doesn't, what is expected at a certain level. And it doesn't mean that you have to spend a lot of money at all, or any money if you're able to look at it. The technology exists to be able to learn or to partner people who've got those tools to be able to bring, in the case of film and television, up to the level that you need to, that they can look at and at least see the potential of it. So I think that that's part of it. It's just putting it out consistently. And also what's been really great is not being afraid to to be rejected, just sort of connecting with people on social media of all, if they work for these companies, connecting with them, not hassling them, maybe not even messaging them, but just, adding them as a friend on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, that sort of thing, and continuing to put out your material that you're passionate about, that's at that certain, production quality. Even if you're a novelist or a short story writer, and you put it on, all you can afford is the your stories, and pasting them on the web, just having great stories that are designed for the web. And what I mean by that is, if you put it on Facebook and you think about the way that we sort of consume content on Facebook, that we're scrolling through, you have to grab them from that very first line, and know that that next line better grab them, and the next line better grab them, and the next line better grab them, etc., until the very end. And that's different than that same story if you were writing it for print, or if you're writing it for Twitter, or writing it for LinkedIn. You have to design your stories, if you're just a writer, to be for that platform. So if you can make that connection with people on social media, and you're putting out your content, whether it be video or print, or photos or anything, comics, doesn't matter, and you can put it out there consistently. And consistently means at least once a week. More is fine, depending on the platform. And that's been the difference,
Right.
because they are really honestly looking. If you are a Black, if you're a Latino, if you're Indigenous, if you're Asian, of any sort, or anything in between, some kind of unique voice that they don't get to see all the time, they are consciously looking for that sort of thing. So it doesn't matter if you're on YouTube, Snap, LinkedIn, TikTok, any of that stuff, they are looking for it. So there's some specific things you can do to help that along, but overall, it's simply putting out your material the best quality you can, designing it for that platform consistently. And if you do that, and you've got talent, then you stand a really good chance of them knocking your doors. And if they don't knock on your doors, you can reach out to them. You can find a way to reach out to them. So it's definitely possible to you.
Well, this is really specific. I like that you've really given us some very clear steps to take. One of the things I like that you're so clear about was consistent quality material. And honestly, no one wants to admit that their baby's not pretty and cute, right?
Right,
What
exactly.
is it that, what have you done specifically, Jeff, around this whole idea of rejection? How have you managed it? Quite frankly, I mean, I think it's a mind game, but
hmm
in a creative space, it could kind of pause and hinder that creativity. How have you managed rejection over the years?
I think, looking back, I was never discouraged in terms of thinking that, oh, I don't have the talent. I got impatient. I was like, why hasn't it taken yet?
Mm,
And why don't they get it? When are they going to get it? Because I've had a long history of sort of being ahead of the curve, and being a visionary, and putting things out way before the world was ready to see them. If you look back at some of the social media posts I put out, from back in the early 2000s. I was talking about things that are just now coming to fruition. So sometimes it takes a while for the world to catch up to your vision, but you just have to keep on putting it out there. Eventually, you'll find your people. What they're saying when they reject you is sometimes, um, not now, or they're saying,
mm.
I am not your people. So you need to find those people. So I would find, like, don't be upset with them. They're helping you. They're saying that this is not for them. They are not going to be your cheerleaders. They're not going to be your supporters. Seek out people who are already fans of your kind of work. That's who you need to connect with. And then, what I found also is that when it's the right timing, you don't have to push. You don't have to convince. It just falls into place. So you're finding you have to push or nag or annoy anyone in any way, that means it's not the right time, or not the right person. So, rather than spending your time trying to convince somebody of something, go seek out somebody who is a match for your vision. And what's great now is that you don't have to do something mainstream and sort of, homogenized. You can do something very specific, and you don't need to have millions of fans, or even hundreds of thousands, or even thousands. You can find a small group of 100 or 200 people, if you really look, who just automatically get you. And maybe they like you because they like the way you look, and that's okay. And that's an opening door for them to look at your material and really love what you do. They want to support you because they like who you are, and that's okay too. So I think God gives us all gifts, There are people who can say the same message, the same story, but look completely differently, and people will gravitate more toward, for example, a person of color because they look like them or because they can relate to them, or more toward a female than male, or vice versa, because they connect to that person who's telling the same story, the same message, and that's okay. We don't need to have millions of fans in order to be successful anymore.
And I love that you're saying that because I still think this industry, as even though we're definitely in a space of more self-publishing, there is this thought of we've got to get to this so many number followers, and it doesn't matter if it's just one platform, but you got to get every platform. I like that you're talking about those true fans, and it sounds like that's really what you've done.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. I think it's about finding it's quality of fans than quantity. And I've spoken to many executives about this, especially recently. It used to be when social media really made its big boom that it was about getting as many millions of followers or friends. Now, if you have a few hundred and they are really engaged and they are doing all the work for you, they're your advocates and they are spreading word and sharing, that can be enough. So it doesn't mean necessarily you have to have the quantity of people. If you have really people who are really advocates and cheerleaders and loud vocal advocates about what you do and how excited they are, that can be all that you need.
Love that. Love that.
Mhm.
I'm curious, Jeff, because you've done so many things across different platforms, what is the book or the very work that has not yet come to fruition, but you know it is the thing that's to be birthed next? I'm curious, what is the book that you wanted to write but haven't, or the film that you've not yet produced? What is that? Can you share it with us?
Sure, I have a novella that I put out that I'm expanding to be much larger than what it was put out. The novella is called Chains, and what I'm doing is expanding the story, and now it's called Kingdoms of the Last Tribes, and it's sort of what I would call like an African Game of Thrones type of story, where it includes actual African mythology. And folklore that's in different countries in Africa, and it's all part of his story, and it's a great story I'm really passionate about, and I would like it to be on the big screen or small screen, but what's great is that it can also be a graphic novel, or it could be a traditional novel. So that's sort of my default product. So even though I'm working on different products, whenever in between products I always go back to this this Kingdoms of the Last Tribe story because I'm really passionate about it. I've been working on it since I was in some form since I was about 16 or 17 years old. So I'm just now I'm 44. Yeah, 44. So I'm just now like back to it and like really buckling down and working hard on it.
Incredible. You know, it's interesting when you were describing this novella, I started to think about the gap that's been created from Black Panther, Chadwick's untimely death, and it feels like we're ready for something like this. And I was going to ask, do you believe it's a matter of designing things that people will be ready for, or is it designing from pure passion, or is it a hybrid? How do you think about the whole creative process?
I think in terms of if your question is how to make it successful and really blow up, I think it's a hybrid. I think it's about writing what you're passionate about because it may not happen overnight. This is why that cliche is so true. You have to work on something you're passionate about because even when you don't see the success, you have to be able to come back to it and continue to stay with it until it's truly ready for the world. That's why for me it's important to be passionate about it, and yeah, you can definitely design things within what you're passionate about to be more likely that it'll be accepted by the public or by the mainstream or by your audience. Absolutely, why not? I mean, we are in a service industry as artists. We're here to express ourselves, but we're also here to connect to people, and that's our service, to make the world a better place, to make people feel deeply, and in that's way that's our craft. craft. That's how we connect to people, and that's how we service people. So why not have a hybrid? Why not write what you're passionate about, and at the same time write something that you think that people will really enjoy? And that way, it's sort of a marriage of, the fans are very much a part of the creative process for me. They are telling us what they want. They're telling us, like you said, where there's a gap, what they want more of. So why not take what you're passionate about and then bridge that together? It's only going to increase your chances of being successful. So
Love that. I so like that you really made this connection between this work and it being an act of service. That to me is awesome. Is awesome. We've got some great questions that are coming in, Jeff. Do you mind if I ask those now?
sure, absolutely.
Awesome. Awesome. So Nicole asks, when you're putting your own money behind your project, where would be the top places to be able to prioritize the funds? Does that question make sense? If you're self-funding, she's asking, where would you prioritize? In what direction do you spend this money?
So I'm assuming she's talking about with books, so and self-publishing. So if I'm self-funding, which I pretty much always do, if I had a limited amount of funds today, I would focus my energy on making the story the best it can be, and that has nothing to do with copy editing or proofreading. It has to do with maybe content editing or getting a developmental editor. uh, First of all, making sure that that story is solid. The second thing that I would do would be to help build the audience. So finding out who the audience is, where they are. You might do Facebook ads. Learning about how to do that is great. There's a gentleman by the name of Brendan Kane, Kane, Brendan. He has a great strategy for Facebook ads that I highly recommend that you research. And the way that he does it is he shows you how to do it with just $1 or two, just like testing out what the best angle is for a Facebook ad and making these different changes and that sort of thing. So something like that, that's what I would do if I had absolutely no money or close to no money. And if you literally have $20, that's all you can scrounge together, and that's then I would spend it on whatever it takes to get the story to be the best that it can be. And that could be finding someone, you don't have to be an editor to really know story. You can find somebody. There are people who have a natural knack for it, who are like fanatics of a certain genre, and ask them, hey, would you mind taking a look at this and give me your feedback, or collaborating with me? Maybe you're not very good at storytelling, but you're great at copy editing, or you're really not good at this, but you're great at that. Finding somebody you can partner with who has those strengths where you have weaknesses can be a great way to utilize your energy and your resources as well.
Oh, great. What solid advice. And you brought up the whole idea of copy or content editing. Could you help our watchers, listeners to know a little bit about where they would find these types of resources and how to know that they're good?
hmm There's lots of ways to find great copy editors. But I just have to say this to authors that sometimes because we only have control over certain things, so they spend so much time reworking a sentence over and over again when that sentence is not going to make a difference between whether the reader or the audience likes it or not. So yes, do not have, errors in your story if at all possible. Absolutely, but just know that you don't need to spend hundreds of dollars necessarily in order to have great copy editing. But it is important, and if you don't have the resources to get great copy editing, or after you have it copy edited, have it proofread, there are teachers who are available. When I first put out my first book, I literally hired teachers. I figured, okay, this is a language arts teacher. She probably knows something about grammar. So I had
Hopefully.
her, yeah. So I hired a teacher to go through and do my first round of copy edits, and that helped a lot. But if you want to look at different resources, Upwork.com, Upwork.com is a great place to find people. Fiverr, even if you look, you have to kiss a lot of frogs to find prints, but you can
Yeah.
definitely find them there. Also, there's plenty of groups on Facebook groups for writers where people can recommend them too. But what I suggest in terms of picking the right kind of copy editor is pick four, give them a small section, maybe the same section if you want. Something cost you $5, $10 each person. Find out who does the best job, and then choose from that person. Also, you'll be able to find out whether or not they even meet deadlines or if they get along with you from that small selection. That's what I would suggest.
Terrific. So it is just, it's not just their work, but also their ability to work with you. So this is awesome. This is great information. Talk to us, Jeff, about, you mentioned of the research that you're doing and some other things that are coming up. What else can you share with us? What else is next for you?
Wow, lots of a lot of things are pending right now. A lot of opportunities to work with different major studios and TV networks and streaming companies I'm excited about, but I can't talk about them quite yet because I'm waiting for them to come to fruition. What I can talk
Okay,
about is what I talked about earlier is I'm really buckling down to work on this Kingdoms of the Last Tribe story. It may take some time to put it out, but when it's out, it's going to be worth the wait. So
terrific. I've got another question coming up here. And while that question's coming up, Jeff, how do people connect with you and stay connected? I know, of course, you're all across Amazon. I know you've got your website, but talk to us about what those things are and where else.
sure, if you want to connect with me, probably you can find me on Facebook. I'm that's probably the best way to reach me. Possibly LinkedIn would be the second choice.
All
Those are
right.
great ways to connect. Yeah, you can always look at my website too, which is jeffrivera.com if you want to look at some of the things I post there as
Terrific.
well. So
And that's Rivera with one I, Rivera, correct?
yes, River with an A. Yes.
I like that. I like that. So here's another question for you that's come in from Emmanuel. He asked, do you believe African kingdoms are a rise in Hollywood Panther?
I actually missed your question. Could you say it again?
Oh, sure thing. The question came in from Emmanuel, and he wondered, is the concept behind African kingdom the rise in Hollywood since Black Panther?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure it's on a rise. I mean, what's great is that mainstream Hollywood and New York is seen like, oh wow, there's an audience for this. Wow, well let's start bringing out our Xerox machines and start copying it. So I think that's been great that people are on the rise for it. But for a story like that, it takes so long to develop and to put it out there. It may be a while before we see something like that. I mean, I believe is it Children of Blood and Bone? I believe the book that came out I think about a year or two ago, that book is just was bought I think maybe a year or two ago, and I don't think they've even finished the script yet. So it takes a while for even a book like that to come out. So it's going to be there's plenty of time, and maybe 5 years from now we'll see like it's just a tsunami of those kind of stories. But right now there's a great space. So if you're writing that kind of story, now's the time, and that's the perfect time to be a self-published author because you can get it out much faster, and so you could become because like you said, people are looking for something like that. There's been we had Black Panther, and we're kind of waiting for the next that kind of genre. So if you can do it and put it out now, do it now. So
Terrific. That's great advice. I feel like this closing question is a great closing question, Jeff. So the question came in from April, and she asked, where do you draw your inspiration?
where do I draw my inspiration? Usually from real life in some way. Usually it's because it might be a gift to somebody. Like for example, I write a lot for my nieces and nephews. I have 14 of them. So when I
Oh,
write
wow.
something, yeah, it's a lot. Yeah. When I write a story, it might be for like children or for young adults. So I'll be writing to a particular niece or nephew. So that definitely inspires me. Some of the stories are stories I've had for years, and I'm just now in the position where I can start to tell those stories. So and now more than ever, I mean, um, stories are a way to really say what you want to say about politics, about religion, about your faith, about whatever it is you believe in through the eyes of a character. So that definitely inspires me to be able to finally say what I really believe in a way that will be palatable and a way that people can truly understand through a character's shoes and a character's eyes how I feel about certain things. So that definitely inspires me. So
Awesome, awesome. Well, we're not out of information or questions, but we're out of time, Jeff. This has been an incredible conversation. Your perspective, I feel like, has been so informational for our authors, aspiring authors. Thank you for sharing your life and your work with us. Guys, make sure to check him out at Jeff Rivera, as he mentioned, river with an A.com, and follow him on Facebook and LinkedIn. And also check in with all of our vendors right below this particular screen. Talk to them, chat with them, and buy